I'm going to do my best to explain in this video what you see on screen right here, where Gojo is telling Megami you can't imagine a stronger future version of yourself, because to some of you this may sound crazy, may just be nonsensical, but to me this is just how reality works. First of all, you have to be able to imagine yourself as the future version of yourself that you want to be, because by doing so it'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you stop thinking about yourself as this person that you don't want to be, then you'll stop being and acting as that person. When you start to ask questions such as I have done this to myself, is like, what would the most successful version of myself do? How would I wake up? How would I communicate? How would I interact? How would I behave? What would I do on a given day? In what ways would I talk with people? And what questions would I ask? How would I perceive myself? What ways would I be able to receive an income? What type of income would I be making? What type of powers would I have? What type of way would I understand myself? And if I didn't understand myself in the ways that I understood myself up until this point, what is the strongest version of myself doing? What is the most successful version of myself doing? How am I looking at this in the specific way that it needs to be looked at? By doing these things and asking these questions to ourselves, then we can start to become a stronger version of ourselves. A lot of the times we can't imagine our stronger version of ourselves because we lack the right way of thinking. That's why I come in as a coach, so you can schedule a call down below in the link in the description, which I can help you ask these better questions of yourself so you can become a stronger version of yourself. If you want to remain weak, if you want to remain like the Itadori that was going to die, that has died, that has allowed for Sukuna to overcome him, that wasn't able to defeat the S-class curses, then by all means, you can keep being that person. I don't care. Like, that's really your own personal take. That's your own way of viewing the world. And if that upsets you, clearly that means there's a definition tied to that thing that we can work through. If it didn't upset you, then you might be a little bit further along than you ever imagined, which is great. Both of those are great ways to be able to view what is happening to you in this said time. And I was talking about that in the last video about the definitions and beliefs, because that's the only way that we have feelings and or emotions. So if you can't imagine a stronger version of yourself, then how do you expect, or can you think of becoming that stronger version of yourself? Because this is going to break a lot of your brains. And I don't want to go into this too much, but it's going to still break a lot of your brains. Time does not exist. It's a figment of our imagination, because the only ever time that is happening is the time that is happening right now. In this specific moment, this 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 moment. There is no other time than this moment right here. And you can be like, well, what do you mean? There, of course there is. Like, I can go over here and it's a different time. It's like, no, but like when you get there, it's still going to be now. It's not going to be 10 p.m. Like, sure, it could be 10 p.m., but like if you ask somebody, it's like, it's now. There's never a time where you're in the future. There's never a time when you're in the past. The only time that ever exists is now, in this present moment. You can run through all these different scenarios in your head, like maybe before you even wake up in the bed in the morning. You can be like, oh, I have to do all these things throughout the day. And like you go through all these different scenarios within your own mind of things that have yet to even happen. All you're doing is you're literally laying in bed. You can do the same thing like when you're driving to work and you're thinking about all these other things. You aren't doing any of those things. All you're doing is like you're being in the car, but you created this whole different reality around yourself to think that you are somewhere else. And this is where I say, like, if you can imagine the strongest version of yourself, if you can imagine what that person would do, how they would wake up, how they would behave, the things that they would do throughout the day, the conversations that they would have, the places that they would go, the people that they would talk to, the days that they would do, the actions that they would take, you will start to do those things, because there's this theory, there's this concept, there's this belief, there's this way of being that once you become aware of that said thing, then your body just naturally does that said thing. I like to think about it in these ways, and you can think about it in these ways as well too. Let's say you are making a program, or you're running a program, or you set your task, your computer, to update itself, like in some way, shape, or form. Like maybe it needed a software update. Like you aren't thinking about the software update. You just click the button because you became aware that it needed to happen, and then the software update just happens for itself in the background. Our brains are the exact same way. You figure out what you need to do, you push the button, and then it does the said thing. You are just like the vessel. You are just kind of like how Itadori is the vessel for Sukuna. He's just the vessel he's carrying him around, which you are doing the exact same thing. You just have to set up the right task so that you can become the strongest version of yourself. If you can't imagine the strongest version of yourself, how do you expect to become the strongest version of yourself? It first comes down to imagining what that person would be. And a lot of the times we have limiting beliefs, we have limiting thinking, we aren't thinking as big as we want to think. Because I can tell you right now, it's like, yeah, making $100,000 a month, if you're a money person, like we'll do that, and I'll do a spiritual thing here in a second as well too. If making $100,000 a month sounds like a lot to you, there's hundreds of people, probably thousands of people. I mean, there are thousands of people, even millions of people that are doing that every single day. Like they're making that much per month. And you can be like, no, they aren't. I'm like, bro, if you look at how many millionaires there are in this world right now, there was, I believe, 5.3 million millionaires just in the United States, which is an outrageous amount of people. And to be able to be a millionaire, you have to be making $100,000 a month. Because if you think about it, to be making $1 million in a year, you do 100,000 times that by 12, you're at 1.2 million. And you're making $1 million a year. Quite simple math. And it's just, to me and to you, that might be like, there's no way that that's possible. But it's like, there is. It is, because there's hundreds of thousands of millions of people doing that exact same thing right now. People are even making more than that. People are making millions of dollars a month. It just really comes down to what you want to do. And if you didn't even know that that was possible, then how would you expect that you could achieve something like that if you didn't know that it was true? And that's where I say, if you can't imagine the strongest version of yourself, then what are you expecting to have happen? Now, this is the whole flashback, and I did a different video about how time doesn't exist, and how Toto was able to go back and have this whole conversation within his head that it lasted 0.01 seconds. You can do that exact same thing. Megami did the same thing when he had this little flashback with Gojo when he got knocked out by the S rank cursed spirit. And as soon as he did that, it was like, oh, okay. I do have a different way of going about this. So I'm going to use my domain. It's not going to be perfect because it's never going to be perfect at the beginning. Look at the channel over the years. The channel has evolved. It's always changing. It's always growing, because that's the one thing that is constant, is change. Constantly changing is the best way to view the world, because you acquire new information, you acquire new ideas, you acquire new ways of being, and then that information creates a new version of yourself that you didn't originally have, which then, in the hopes, can make you stronger than you were ever stronger beforehand. So if you can't imagine the strongest version of yourself, how do you expect to behave and act as that person? And that's why I do these things. I give you different perspectives. I give you different ways of looking at the world, of viewing the world, of being able to interact in the world. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to open your eye, if you're able to open your way of thinking, your imagination, the world is going to change in more ways than you ever could know, because it's changed for me. I never thought that I could have a 70-inch TV in my apartment. Boom, I get it. I didn't even have to pay for it. Never imagined that I could have let's say a table or a rug or all this other stuff that I've had, that's just a printer, all this stuff that just has magically come to me because I decided to think that hey, you know what, maybe this is possible. Maybe the strongest version of myself can unlock these said things. And if I can unlock these said things, then that means that it is true. If you can't unlock the said things, then how do you expect or imagine or think that any of this will ever end up actually happening? You have to be the one that goes out and believes in yourself, in the strength that you do have, because you're a lot stronger than you are. And this is why I recommend having somebody see what you yourself need help with, because this is what I have received from other people. It's what I have received from myself. And if I can receive it from myself, then I can unlock those new levels. And I still get it from other people as well too, when I do have interactions and conversations with people. Because there was a time in my life where I stopped talking to people and I didn't learn as much as I needed to learn, because I needed to go more on the internal. There's always aspects, there's always seasons, there's always ways of viewing the world. But I'd highly recommend, if you're wanting to do something and you are wanting to figure out what the strongest version of yourself is, have somebody else look at you, because you yourself can only see yourself from the angle that you are at right now. Whereas somebody else, such as myself, comes in and they're like, oh yeah, that speech pattern that you said, did you catch that? Because you say the same thing over and over and over and over again, and you don't notice it. And then when somebody else comes in, it's like, oh, did you catch that you just said should there? And it's like, no, I didn't. It's like, oh, yeah. Why'd you say that? It's like, oh, because of XYZ thing or whatever it may be. It really just comes down to your own belief, your own words. And if you can figure out the words that you're saying, then you can start to become a stronger future version of yourself. But you first have to be able to imagine it. If you can't imagine it, then it's never going to happen.